I think there's a lot more to be encouraged by from that Manchester United win than I think fans are generally saying. And no, I'm not going to con you into thinking it was a good performance. It wasn't. We were sloppy in possession. We were very, very open. United asked a lot of questions. David Raya, they hit the post. Look, on another day, I'm not sure we win it. But that's something to talk about, because how often do Arsenal win games that they don't deserve? We'll leave that to the end of the video. Purely on a tactical level, there was actually quite a lot I was encouraged by from Arsenal. I think Arteta and Arsenal went out to take the game to Manchester United, to go punch for punch, to actually say, show us your best, we'll show you ours, in the hope that our individual quality comes through. I want to try and prove it in this video. We're going to start by talking about what we did defensively, because if we take it to the tactical pad, I felt that Arsenal did try and press Manchester United, and there's some very, very key things in the press I noticed. For example, Ødegaard and Rice were on a level. They were often pressing as high up the pitch together. Sure, at times we went into our kind of 4-4-2 shape, which we know out of possession we can do, but Rice was very aggressive onto Casemiro. De Ligt stepped into midfield. Ødegaard picked him up, and they were happy to leave Zubimendi a little bit on his own in an island to defend that big space, because Arsenal were trying to be really, really aggressive. Let me show you in some screenshots we got from the game, because it happened throughout. These are all completely different minutes, completely different situations in which Arsenal were very, very aggressive in the press, trying to step onto the goalkeeper, trying to step onto their back three and build up, causing Manchester United, well, actually, to be fair, United dealt with it quite well, but causing them to go long at times, and meaning we found ourselves in a lot of one-on-one individual battles. So if we just get rid of that, and we show you here, Saliba with Mount, Gabriel at times with Cunha. The battles were different, but it was Bema and Bema who got Calafiori the booking. There were a lot of one-on-one battles that Arsenal found themselves in, because they were going man for man and backing themselves. So when they were pressing high up the pitch, they were hoping to win the ball, create turnovers. They didn't. We know Arsenal can do that very well. We are a high turnover team. We create chances. We don't always execute it, but it meant a lot of individual battles. And unfortunately, being so early in the season, being very rusty, Arsenal, I think, found themselves in a few too many of those, which I think suggested an openness from Arsenal that people wouldn't have liked, but I actually think it was quite intentional. Let me show you some of those one-on-one battles. Here's a 3-on-3, for example, early into the game. Here's some covering from Ben White coming across with only 3 defenders, basically nearer to goal than 4 or 5 Manchester United attackers. We've got, again, more covering throughout. We've got Calafiori pressing onto Dalot, and again, only a back 3 left behind. There were so many moments in which Arsenal found themselves essentially in one-on-one defensive situations, running back, and depending on the pace and quality of the individuals as defenders to kind of take us through. But what Arsenal did do well, while that was all a little bit messy and a little bit kind of, let's just kind of get through, everyone just sort of dig in and make it happen, I do actually think what Arsenal got tactically right on the defensive side was the defending of the channels. I want to try and illustrate it again here on the tactical pad before I show you in game. So if we just move this ball all the way out to Mbemo, because what I think our Manchester United, should I say, did really, really well throughout the game was ensure that Mount, Cunha and Bema, who can all play in the pockets, were actually still having quite a lot of joy pulling out wide, or at least pulling our defenders in. But what I think it meant for Arsenal defensively was a lot of worrying about this space, and I actually think we defended it well via, let's show it in red, via Martinelli often dropping into that space. Zubimendi covered a lot. Gabriel covered in that space. I remember seeing Ben White, we showed in one of the screenshots there, really coming across to cover too. Those channels, I think Arsenal were very, very worried about because of the nature of Manchester United having wing backs, therefore there being inside forwards that could exploit that space. But when someone like Mbemo pulls wide, you can get the underlap of a Dalot. Or if Mbemo carries the ball central with Calafiori, then you've got that run, but you still need that kind of back 5 formed, which again we'll talk about in a little bit, with someone like Martinelli coming across, or Zubimendi dropping back into the half-back space, which is the midfielder dropping into the 2 centre-backs. So Arsenal had to constantly worry about those channels, and for all our franticness a word? For all the frantic kind of running back and individual defending, for all the slightly let's say, lack of success on the press because we didn't create many high turnovers. Defending the inside channels, I thought Arsenal did really, really well. And we're going to show some screenshot examples of it here. Zubimendi covering across in between White and Saliba. And then other examples, he gave away a foul against Bruno Fernandes. We've got Martinelli covering the fullback as Calafiori steps forward. Martinelli dropping in between as well. Gabriel and Calafiori to cover that space. I just felt Arsenal actually did a really good job of ensuring Manchester United didn't have too much joy. Because, I mean, Cunha, that was the area of the pitch that Cunha forced a great save against David Raya. It's not that Arsenal completely nullified Man United there. It's just that they actually did a good job of ensuring that it wasn't a relentless threat and that we had players to deal with it, and we recognised that's probably where they were going to hurt us. They nearly did. So anyway, that's kind of my take from a defensive perspective. Arsenal tried to be aggressive. Arsenal had to sort of drop deep at times. Arsenal had to defend the channels, but I think they did it okay. Now we're going to talk about a back five, but I want to leave that to a little bit later because I want to keep talking about Arsenal's intent through this game to actually play and have the ball and actually be more expressive than we certainly saw. From a shot count perspective, I think they had 22, we had 9. We were not a threat. Bayern barely made any saves. But that doesn't mean that was the intent. And I think we have to look beyond what Arsenal achieved and look more at what they wanted to do in a game that we still won and can actually go, okay, well, we won without executing it. That's interesting. Let me show you this because I want to talk about Arsenal attacking with pace. Now, James Benge tweeted that after a summer of planning for it, Arsenal played fast, incredibly fast. In fact, their direct speed was 55% higher than the average since 22-23. Were there 7 seconds or less gunners by design? Were they 7 seconds or less gunners by design, a function of a Celtic game, or was it just a mess? And he writes in it, during their period of title contention, they have never played at such a direct speed, and the margin by which they picked up the pace is quite remarkable. The 2.02 meters per second they advanced towards goal is 55% quicker than the average of 22-23, 23-24, and 24-25. Their fastest game over the last 3 seasons, a 3-0 win at Bournemouth in May 2024, was 16% slower than this. No wonder their pass completion was at holding on to a lead with 10 men at the Etihad levels. And I get it, pass completion and trying to just dig deep, it was a little bit frantic and a little bit, ooh, come on, surely we got better than this. But there was a pace to which Arsenal tried to play. And again, I go back to intent. Let me show you transition moments. And there were so many of them where Ødegaard got the pass wrong, where Martinelli couldn't quite find, actually he did find Calafiori, but Calafiori was offside. That could have been a moment where we had 3 players bearing down on goal. There's another moment where Saka's running through and Ødegaard's got 3-4 options in front of him. It was time and time and time again. I think I counted 7 transition moments in that first half that I think a team more used to doing this and generally just better at it, I think actually would have come out with 2-3 goals in that first half. And the problem is that people say Arsenal didn't create chances, and they're right, we didn't create chances, but we were one good pass away on 7 occasions from creating almost the perfect chance. And that's where I feel that there was an intent from Arsenal to be more direct, to take the game more to Manchester United and be more basketball, be more punch for punch. We just couldn't get it right. But will we? I think we could, because I want to show you this graphic here. These are our counter-attacks scored under Mikel Arteta's in his full seasons. And as you can see, with 1 goal in his first full season to 6, 4, 7, and then 9, you can see that there was, there's been a growth with, 4 to 7 to 9 in the last 3 seasons in terms of the amount of goals from counter-attacks we've scored. But 9 is the highest, and that was last season. Towards the end of last season, we saw Rice versus Brentford, Martinelli versus Real Madrid, and quite a few other examples. Was it Rice or someone scored against Brentford on the counter-attack? Maybe it was Partey. Anyway, we saw those goals coming from transition because Arsenal were embracing that side of the game a little bit more. And I just think if you marry what we're trying to do more this season with the execution of last season, I actually think Arsenal can evolve and actually punish Manchester United in these situations if this game were to happen in 5 to 10 games time rather than on the opening day where there's kind of a pressure to win. You're betting in 2 big new signings and it's just all a little bit frantic in what is a very, very difficult start to the season. So it was a first half where Arsenal tried to get on the ball. I think they tried to get on the ball. We'll talk about it in a sec. They tried to press. They tried to create moments in transition. It wasn't happening. Now, Arsenal normally are able to just get their foot on the ball, calm the game down and just say, well, let's move the ball around, let's sort of kill them with 1,000 passes, let's just try and take the sting out the game. And I'm surprised in the second half that we didn't see that, but Zubimendi had a very, very difficult game. And I'm not saying he didn't do well, but he did have a difficult game. I want to show you here how many times he was marked out the game. You can see him, that number 6. So often there were players constantly around him trying to make sure he wasn't an outlet and build up with him. Bemo, Cunha, Mount, whoever, getting very, very close to him. And when you do that, he's having to then drop in between the centre-backs to try and get the ball. He's trying to drop into really deep areas. You're losing your ability to kind of control that midfield because he's literally stood in between Saliba and Gabriel, and you're asking Rice and Ødegaard, therefore, to get control of the midfield too. Now, I'm not saying that's good enough, okay? I'm not saying Arsenal, I'm not saying it's okay. Well, they pressed us and Zubimendi couldn't play, so we didn't have control of midfield. Again, because it's the opening day of the season, because it's the first game, because of the magnitude of playing at Old Trafford and needing to get a win there, I can kind of stomach it and appreciate that Arsenal didn't have their control they'd have wanted. Ødegaard said that at half-time. They was all a little bit frantic. Zubimendi couldn't calm things down. Therefore, we're trying to release the ball quicker in transition. Therefore, actually, Arsenal in the second half just went to what they know, and that was a 5-3-2. Now, we did see bits of it in the first half when we got into a deep block, but I want to show you here, this comes from StatZone, a really good app on iOS. We can see that Madueke in the average positions, you can see that I've got this shaped to only show us the second half average positions and their influence map. The influence, the bigger the name, shows you how kind of much they're involved in the game, but you can see that Madueke is nearer Calafiori, but Saka, the wing on the other side, is much higher up. In more of a 5-3-2 shape, Arsenal were actually just saying, all right, we'll match the wing backs, we'll pack out the central part of this, the midfield and the pitch, but Saka can be some kind of outlet. And to be fair, De Ligt makes a great block that he probably scores from if De Ligt doesn't make that block, and then he puts it on a plate for Madueke, or nearly did. I think Bruno got a touch. So Saka being an outlet in some way, although it came very late in the game, actually was beneficial to Arsenal. Probably should have got us a second goal at least, but maybe even a third. So Arsenal dropped into that shape to see it out, but again, I think they did it because Zubimendi was absolutely pressed out the game. So rather than recognise that we could wrestle control back, I think we went, it's the opening day, we're all rusty, Gabriel's only getting his second start since March or something, let's just keep it tight and do what we do best. And Arsenal did find a way through. We played with fire. Let me make that very clear. I'm not saying we were even great from that perspective, but I could understand why, as the game played out and the press wasn't working, Zubimendi was struggling to get on the ball and we couldn't really wrestle control. I can see why in the first half that was very open, very back and forth. The transitions weren't really happening. Arsenal reverted to what they know and said, okay, let's put that idea away to next week, go back to what we know. And I can understand that, to be fair. And ultimately, we got a win, guys. The other big thing to point out is we won. We won at Old Trafford. I think we've won 4 times in 18. What did Arteta say? I think he said 18, but he meant 22 years, something like that. And 3 of those wins have come under Mikel Arteta, and all 3 of them have been 1-0 wins. Now, I'd prefer winning 1-0 at Old Trafford, having to suffer a little bit, than constantly losing there. And Arsenal have now, I think since we lost their 3-1 in 22-23, where Jesus was bullying Lisandro Martinez and we played brilliantly and we had all the chances, we were totally in control, we lost 3-1 because we couldn't deal with them in transition. And what I find interesting is, since then, we've won 1-0, we've drawn 1-1, and we've won 1-0 again after that. And I don't think any of those performances were brilliant, but we picked up 7 points out of 9 in our last 3 visits to Old Trafford. I prefer that. Now, Alex of the Different Knock asked this: what was the last game that we won that we got away with before today? He has Leeds away in the 22-23 campaign, and yeah, I remember that. Now, Rory Talks Football's replies saying probably Villa away early last season, and Alex thinks there's something in that. Now, to be fair, I just think we played well enough to win that game, but I get it. Ollie Watkins missed massive opportunities. We weren't brilliant. We were kind of okay, good enough. We won the game 2-0, but how often do Arsenal win games that they don't necessarily deserve? And how often are we looking at our rivals going for the title and go, how did you win that? What do you mean you won that game? And that is something Arsenal need to get. And that in itself is a positive, that we've already picked up 3 points that we didn't necessarily deserve. And that, I honestly believe, is one up on last season already. That's already 3 points gained, and it's 2 points gained on this exact fixture a year ago. So I think that in itself is encouraging. And if you don't believe me, the XG philosophy came out with this tweet saying Arsenal won today despite losing on XG, something they only did once across the entirety of last season. Look, people, to round up, Arsenal were not great. Let me make that really abundantly clear. I don't want to see that performance much at all, if ever. But I can acknowledge that we tried different things, that we looked to be aggressive, that we invited a basketball style game, and when we didn't have the success we wanted from it, we led through a set piece, but we didn't have the success in transition we wanted. We went back to what we know, and how great that we got that platform to grind out a win against a Man United side that looked very lively in a big atmosphere, that had some top players on the pitch, and we came out with a win. I think there's positives there. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Let me know what you think of this breakdown. If you want my sort of instant reaction and my kind of thoughts, that's all on Goonerverse News now. This will be an analysis channel, a collab channel, somewhere we go into everything in a little bit more depth and detail. But I'd love to know your thoughts. Arsenal win at Old Trafford in the opening weekend of the Premier League season is 3 out of 3 points, and I'm just going to take the positives with it. But I hope I've highlighted some positives that you can see too. Catch you in a bit.